they were also like military, so like they were kind of like probably like that anyway. Like,
Yeah.
Guys get
sorry.
together, start cutting each other's abdomens open.
Yeah, sorry. I was in the military, so hey, this is accurate.
Hello, welcome to Survivor's Ed, How to Not Die First in a Horror Movie. I'm Chris.
I'm Tawny.
I'm Miles.
We are two blacks and a Mexican. Or are we? I had to stretch for this one. I couldn't think of a thing from the movie, so.
I appreciate your hard work, Chris.
So this is a horror movie podcast where we just talk about scary movies that we love, maybe don't love, maybe we feel indifferent about. We just pick one each week and we go in. And the whole theme of this show is that we get to dive into not just the movie itself, but how the people of color in that movie fared. And this is probably going to be one of our most interesting You Good homies that we've done, because this week we are talking about Annihilation, a 2018 film by Alex Garland starring Natalie Portman and incredible cast around her. This is a science fiction horror kind of creepy vibey movie that we all loved, and it's essentially the story of five. It's crazy. We talked about 6 women going into a cave. This time we're talking about 5 women going into a bubble.
Going into a shimmer.
And what happens inside that bubble? Once again, it does not go well. So,
Or does it?
Or does it? Depends
Like,
on whose side you're
don't
on.
travel in groups. Like, that's the key. Like,
Yeah. Right. Another rule. All right. What's the situation in Annihilation?
Yeah, so you guys said a bubble, so that's what it looks like. It's got, so there's Lena is the protagonist, the central protagonist here, and she is married to Kane, so Natalie Portman, Oscar Isaac.
Beautiful couple.
Beautiful couple. Very much, when we see the flashbacks of them, very loving and, affectionate, and but we don't there's some stuff that we don't see, obviously. And Kane one day takes the opportunity to take this special mission without really telling her or discussing it with her, and he disappears into this thing called the Shimmer, which it's like some lighthouse. Do they say where it is? I can't even remember what state it is. It's like Florida or something. I can't remember. But he's on this mission and he goes missing, and then one day when she's painting her room and crying to Crosby, Stills and Nash, he shows up again. But it's not quite him, and his nose starts bleeding, and his body starts spazzing out. And Lena opts to head into the Shimmer, which is gorgeous, and which I think it's very important that it's called the Shimmer. It's not called, the gross metastasized tumor. It's called, and it's pretty. It's beautiful. It's got this gorgeous, like, shimmery pink, purple, yellow iridescence. And she goes in with, with a few other, all ladies, women, and some really weird stuff happens in there, like really, truly weird. The first thing we're aware of is that they wake up and they have no idea how much time has passed, right? Everyone's all disoriented, and camp is set up, and nobody has any memory of how they got there.
And supplies have been used and everything.
Supplies have been used.
Yeah.
And the person leading the expedition is Ventress, who is, you can tell she's like the sort of, the architect type of the sort of the not the mad scientist, but the very like laser focused on finding out what this thing is scientist. And you find out all of these women are carrying some baggage, some emotional baggage. But yeah, go for it, guys.
yeah, I was telling you guys off, like, the first time I watched this, like, it completely creeped me out. Like, I think I had like trouble sleeping, like, after I watched it. It just it was just weird. Like, it was just super just weird as hell, like, which I love. Like, this is my type of science fiction. I mean, I love science fiction anyway, so this is like right up my alley. And I was like, Yo, I wish more people would have, talked about this movie or went to go see it, because it just seemed like it kind of, fell under the radar a little bit. But yeah, like when they go into the shimmer, a lot of the stuff that's in there it's like what nature is. It's beautiful and dangerous at the same time, like which is what nature is to us here. It's like volcanoes are not good or bad. They're just they're there, but they could kill you, but they're something to marvel at, though. So it's like, this is like that on 7 million. It's like everything is something to marvel at. And I just like, when like watching it this time, I was like, man, it's so many just layers upon, like, it's so poetic, like what they're saying in the in the film, that when I first saw it, like I remember it, but I don't really remember. I only saw it one time, so because I was like, yeah, I'm not watching that again. Like I just was so I was so creeped out. I was like, I'm not watching that shit again. It was dope as hell. And I love I think the other thing that got me too was like the score, specifically like
Absolutely.
at the end. It's so fucking dope. Like, it's so
like
good.
that pulsating noise.
Oh
that,
man,
like,
so good. And it's like weirdly melodic, though. It's like this very synth heavy.
It toes that line
man,
really
like
well.
that's like, if that's if you want to get me, that's how you get me. Like with that type of score, like I just loved it. I remember I went to see like Kendrick Lamar, and he came out to that.
Really?
Like that, yeah. I went to see like the championship tour, and like before he came out, like that music was playing. I was like, okay, I see what's happening right now. But yeah, like just the level of creep factor to this, like it's just super poetic as hell. Like there's so many different things you could say this movie is about, and one of the ones that I actually didn't really even think about as much as like cancer, which I guess is pretty prevalent. Like if you're paying attention, it's pretty obvious. Like the cancer is sort of the idea of
well, it's something that's growing out of control, growing in sort of mutating.
Exactly,
out of control.
something duplicating itself and destroying the original thing. And like even what's her name? She has cancer, so it's like it's like right there in your face. But I guess the last thing I guess the last thing I'll say is like I love just the idea. I think she says it too. The idea of like self-destruction. I thought that was just super ill. Like I was just like, yo, this is if you didn't see this movie, you was tripping. Like like the idea of self-destruction though was so dope. It was so like real. Like
but also, just gorgeous. Like those destruction and creation, right? They're flip sides of the same of the same thing. And those I always think about, because I'm like a plant lady. The flowers that are all grow, like that plant that has all the different flowers from different species on it. I'm like, oh my god, I would lose my mind if I saw something like that, just taken completely. But it in this weird way, it's this sort of sin against nature, that it even exists like that.
Yeah, and I like how at first I didn't really know why. I just was like, okay, that's artistic. But like when they continue to show like moments of Natalie Portman's character, of like her infidelity and the times when it's sprinkled, like right when she goes into the shimmer too, it like shows that initial interaction with the guy that she was cheating with or whatever. And it's like that is her self-destruction, is that like they're talking about the husband like sort of destroying himself, but she was they both were really in a lot of different ways.
He became aware of her affair, I think that's implied, right?
Yeah, that was why he went in.
Right. That's why he went in, but even before his own self-destruction, she, like you said, destroyed a happy marriage for apparent. They don't tell us that their marriage is on the rocks in the movie. It's just kind of like you just do shit. Sometimes you do wrong shit, like just for no reason, just because we're built to self-destroy. So this movie's fire, bro. Like I'm thinking about it even more. Like this is
it's a beautiful film, and like I'm amazed at just the way that it captures just such a good, it strikes a good balance of tone throughout. It's almost always unsettling. And I would argue, I mean, Alex Garland is like just making his mark in science fiction right now. And like this movie to me is, you know, I liked Ex Machina a lot. But this movie, I mean, it just feels like he's progressing, you know, and what he gets here is this kind of journey feel to it, while there's this eeriness hanging over the whole thing. You just know the whole time there's this feeling of like foreboding, like you just know this isn't going to end well. There's no version of this story that ends in a way that is just, you know, flowers and sunshine. And so
that's comfortable.
Flowers and sunshine are everywhere though at the end.
I mean, even everybody that's going in, they're constantly saying how you must have something wrong with you, basically, to even want to accept to go in here, because it is sort of a, you know, an foregone conclusion that you're not coming back, probably, like
the complete unknown of it.
One
thing I'll say, so after watching this movie, I think this is my fourth time watching it since it came out, and every time I watch it, I get like a new thing about it that I just fixate on. And this time I fixated on the building of Lena and Kane's relationship, just because I feel like it's just a good example of good screenwriting and good execution of show don't tell. And like you get like probably what Oscar Isaac is probably in this movie a total of what, 10 minutes maybe total.
Yeah.
I mean, like you see him in a couple flashbacks, you see the sort of alien version of him. But he's not in the movie a lot. And there's like two scenes we flash back to. There's the one when they're in bed, and that was what I was saying, like just that scene, you get the whole vibe of what she misses about him, why we know this person we're seeing is not the him that we, you know, like it just tells us so much in just like a few minutes. And those scenes. And I'm just, that impresses me. And so what that did was it inspired me to want to read the book that this movie is based on, written by Jeff Vandermeer. And I read like the first chapter, which it's like got really long chapters, but immediately I was just kind of found it interesting that none of the characters are named in the book. And so like it's just the psychologists, the biologists, like that's it. And the biologist is telling the story, but they're not even the same roles. Like there's an anthropologist and and a surveyor, but it's very clear which characters those are in the movie in a way. But the way it tells it is really cleverly sort of lets you know there's been like 12 missions of this before we came, and no one ever came out okay in the book. And so I think in the movie they sort of truncated that, but still captured that feel of like, yeah, this is not where you go if your life is going well.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I can't remember the exact wording, but like I was thinking, isn't there a scene where Ventress tells her like it's not like you're trying to actively kill yourself, but there's this drive that we have
self-destruction
to self-destruct. Yeah. Even it's not the same as doing something violent to yourself like in a single instant that takes your life. It's this slow over time impulse that we all have to do this stuff to ourselves. That really hit home for me. But to just mess ourselves up, like to self-sabotage, and make ourselves miserable, and
for no apparent reason. Like we don't even know the reason why. Which is
oh shit! If I was married to Oscar Isaac, but
I think it's that's in that scene too, where she asks her, "Why did my husband something?" commit suicide or something to that effect, and she said something like, I think you're confusing suicide with self-destruction. And I think it's like a line like that. I was like,
it's different.
I mean that it is. And it's funny because like we all do this, and I have friends that like I'm constantly talking to, and I'm like, yo, why do you keep doing that? Like you do this thing that like this is clearly not good for you, but you do it like repetitiously. You do it routinely, like it's a part of. You know it's bad. You've identified that it's bad.
Yeah.
It keeps getting you every single time, and you're like, let me try it one more time. Like you just keep continuously doing
One more
it.
time.
Like why you keep doing that? And that about this movie is, it's interesting because there's no explanation for that. It's like what and if you're not trying to kill yourself, like she said, then what are you doing? Like if you're not trying to, actively hurt yourself, what are you doing? And it's like that's a hard question to answer, and it's like I don't even think it's really answered. It isn't. The movie's not trying to answer it, but because it's saying so many other things.
Like it's sort of like I think it's sort of ambivalent about whether or not it's about. I mean, it's about destruction, but it is also, again, going back to that idea of change. Things can't change without first being destroyed, right? So Cain, the original version of him, completely, literally self-destructs with the flash grenade or whatever that thing is, and there's when Lena's like fighting with herself or whatever the new or the new version of herself that hasn't fully formed yet. It's kind of unclear which one of them makes it out, but we're sort of left to maybe a guess or assume that it's the new like changed alien version. So I don't think the movie is saying like change is good and you should embrace it necessarily, but it is saying it's just gonna happen. Right, like this is just something that happens, and we wrestle with it. I think we wrestle with all of these transitions and things that are, these moments of having to make decisions about what our lives are going to be. That's what life is, right? Like at every moment, you're making these choices, and you're gonna make some fucked up choices sometimes. But change is coming, and change is gonna happen, And at the end, I remember I read like so many different reviews of this the first time I ever saw it, and I've watched this movie like several times. But like somebody had interpreted the ending of this movie to be like, it's the alien version of Cain and Lena, and now they're going to take over the world because they needed a male and a female. And I was like, I thought...
What? Did you watch this movie?
I know. I thought it was about... I honestly... I don't know if I felt hopeful, but I felt like here are these two transformed creatures that are going to now face whatever it is together and either make it or not make it, together. But it felt to me like a transformation had occurred. I don't know.
I think they explicitly say in the movie that I think Lena's character is like, I don't think it wanted anything. Like there was no purpose of trying to conquer, like a typical invasion type of alien invasion movie. This wasn't that at all. It wasn't wanting anything. It was just doing what it was supposed to do, which is, grow and evolve and like this. I think to me, there's like every character is like different versions of like the people who embrace the change and then the people that fight it. I feel like Anya is the person that fights.
She's the most scared.
She's the most afraid of change. She does not want things to change. When it initially happens and they find the video and they cut the guy's stomach open, she's like, "No, that's a trick of the light. Like, that's I ain't never seen light do that. Like that ain't exactly."
So obviously,
she's the one.
A writhing creature,
Yeah, she's the one that, I mean, even later on where she's got them in the thing, scene where she's got them all tied into the chair. It's like she's still like struggling with accepting change. Like she's saying my body is changing and I can't accept it. Like I don't know what this is and I'm freaking out because change is happening. And then some of the other ones are more accepting of the actual. I feel like
Ventress is like looking for something else because she's dying,
looking
right?
for.
Well, that's the most. That was the thing I liked about Josie's monologue. She says, as I looked it up exactly the word. She says, Ventress wants to face it. You want to fight it, but I don't think I want either of those things. Imagine dying frightened and in pain and having that as the only part of you which survives. Like the. Ventress wants to face. I mean, that's to me where it becomes the most prevalently about this idea of cancer. because Ventress has cancer, as we know, and her gut reaction, if we're talking about fight or flight reaction to being in the space, she wants to face it. So this idea of like a person who actually has cancer and knows that it's inevitable at this point, they're past the point of fighting it, right? And then Lena, like we've kind of seen, is fighting it, specifically fighting it because she's seeing it happen in a loved one, and she's now wants to get rid of it, right? But then Josie's reaction of, I don't think I want either. That's that idea, that acceptance, right? Like it's not saying this thing is good. It's just saying this thing is.
This thing is,
And
yeah, this thing is happening.
So you either like let it happen or you fight what is potentially and likely a losing battle, you know?
Yeah.
So well done.
This is so
And then we have poor Shepherd who just got eaten by a screaming bear, right?
Yeah.
That poor lady. I'm like, she gets the rawest deal. She doesn't even get to have, she just gets yanked off in the middle of the night.
Right. That was dark. Yeah. No, that
Yeah,
was well executed too.
Yeah, you know what I laughed at though? Like at the end is like how once again, I don't care what it is, any living creature, when you set it on fire, when you set that shit on fire,
I
it's
don't
all
care.
over.
Like
Five
it.
creatures in one.
It's all over.
Doesn't like
It's
it.
all over. I was like, yep, that fire, yep, that's it, yep, that's the end, yeah.
Yeah.
But nah, like I love that scene though when she just starts to turn into the tree or whatever. She's like kind of sitting there, and it is, man, this film
You don't
shot
see
so
the
good.
moment.
Like
right. You don't
Yeah,
see
you
it.
don't
She
see-
just
you
she
don't
goes around
see
the
it.
corner and it's this
But I
just
also-
like peaceful transformation or something.
also like the subtlety right before that
Mm-hmm.
though, how there's a reference to her never showing her arms. And in that moment is the first time she has her arms fully exposed because she's trying to hide the, marks or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just before that, you don't know that this is about to happen. But just before that, she's just sitting there without any jacket or anything covering. And it's just like stuff like that where the director knows you're smart enough to capture that and doesn't need to point it out or say anything or have a character be like, she's not wearing her jacket, and how a stupider movie would have to point that out so that you
exactly it's exactly what would happen.
So
I noticed you're not wearing your jacket.
Well,
I just feel like a different person now.
I'm dying but
now I'm gonna go over here and turn into a tree.
I just feel like the movie is smart and it knows that its viewers are intelligent enough to pick up on these things where it's not gonna hold your hand and explain everything to you. Like it says stuff, and if you catch it, you catch it. If you don't, it's sort of, you kind of have to. I'm glad I watched it again for this because I was like, damn, I sort of missed some of these little nuances like that were happening. And I was like, yo, this movie is like pretty well put together, man. Like I can't really find any fault. I have no gripe with this movie at all. I used to have a gripe with almost every movie. It's just
it's so
You don't
simple.
say.
It's just like so many right. We're on episode what? And, it's so many layers of. It's interesting because it's delivered so simply. That's what I love about it. And there's so many layers of complexity to what's happening here. But it's just delivered so simply. It's just a masterclass in filmmaking to me because it's just like, look how much we learn and how much we feel and how much we talk about a movie, in which if you really look back on a script, how much dialogue and constant chatter is there really? I mean, their characters are obviously talking to each other, but it's all centered around story. There's not a lot of in this kind of movie, you expect there to be more pontificating, right? Or you expect there to be more statements stated. And there is some of that, but it all is in service of the moment. It doesn't feel out of character or like the character's taking a moment to explain to us the world we're in.
Yeah, and it's not like oral exposition. It's more visual. It's so gorgeous. It's such a gorgeous movie that just the lighting in the shimmer. I'm like, can I have that lighting in my house?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I like that.
And it's gorgeous.
And
then the thing at the end that's herself or whatever. Like, it's beautiful. I think it's like it's a ballerina or something, or like somebody like that who's just like super graceful. And there's that moment when she hands the grenade, the like, you know, that like sort of feeling bad or feeling maybe a little bit scared, and the pain of that part of the self-destruction, but also like, yes, this is going to happen, this destruction is going to happen, and then something else will come next. God, it's such a just a beautiful movie all the way through. The sound included in that.
And it's not like trying too hard. Like, that's the thing, is like, it's perfectly, because something like this could get really pretentious like very fast, and I don't feel like it does that. I don't feel like it ever crosses that moment where I'm rolling my eyes like, oh, they thought this was so clever. Like, it is clever.
You know,
and
the characters are strong.
Yeah.
I think that's how like, I think it's because the characters are strong, the performances are strong, so you're sort of drawn into the emotional level there. Like, you're not paying attention to what is this story trying to tell me so much as you are paying attention to what the actors are doing. And I think that's what makes it not feel like that at all. I think you're totally right. Like, it doesn't feel pretentious. It feels very much just like a product of these performances and these characters.
And most importantly, like, because I mean, obviously this is a horror podcast, like the horror elements that I'm scared as fuck, like at certain moments, like when they're like there's thing, like the first thing that they see when they see the recording, the videotape, and they're cutting, you know, the guy's stomach out, that immediately I'm unsettled completely.
The way Kane like keeps kind of, he's just clearly like, it's weird. Oscar Isaac does a lot in this movie.
He looks like fevered or something in it. Like his eyes are kind of bugged out. Yeah. And
he looks manic. Like he, you know, like he's smiling a little bit, but you can tell he's just disturbed.
But and then also like he's completely intrigued by whatever. Like this is like what was happening, and that's the other thing is like, we don't even know what was happening in that video. Like, we really don't get an explanation for that. And I know they're saying like, well, did they all go crazy and, you know, just kill each other, or what happened to, you know, the previous, you know, missions that they sent in here? And it's like, well, I still don't really know. I'm not sure what was happening in that video, but they all had agreed on what they were gonna do, even including the guy. And it was like, why? At what point would I be like, all right, y'all, cut my abdomen open to see, like, even if it was something that just felt weird, I'm like, man, I'm gonna just wait till it come out. Ain't gonna,
we've all simultaneously agreed that we are gonna cut this guy's stomach open.
Right? Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Like, what?
And he
agreed.
Right. Exactly. And he's like, yep. All right. So I mean, we've kind of started to get there anyway. Let's talk about our people of color. This is a part of the show we call "You Good, Homie," where we check in on our people of color and see how they did. And this movie has a pretty diverse cast, but because given the dark nature of the movie, it's an interesting question to ask how our people did, because there's some that did very clearly bad, and there's some that were kind of, we have interesting perspectives on, I think. So do we want to start with, but first, let's just give our honorable mentions to what's his name? Wong.
The doctor?
The actor.
Or
the guy who's in the hazmat suit, who's asking all the questions. Benedict Wong. Yeah, I kept wanting to say BD Wong. I was like, not that one.
Not that one.
Yeah, Benedict Wong. And he's kind of asking the questions, but that's kind of just his role in the movie, is to be told the story. And then we have our home wrecking co-worker.
Were you gonna say hottie?
I know. I was like, what was it? Like super hard ass H's. Like,
all right. We have our home wrecker / home wrecky. I was trying to think, like, what is he when he's also, you know what I mean? He's on both sides of it, because he's wrecking her home and she's wrecking his. Whatever the case, the guy she's cheating with. He's there, but we can just. I don't
he
know.
always plays like some smart guy or something. I mean, I don't even know if that. He just sounds intelligent, and like in this, like I assume he's like a scientist.
I didn't like that she was trying to tell him, like, I don't want anything to do with you, and he's like, come on. I was just
that was weird.
No, like, that's gross.
Especially like Especially
Yeah.
like when it being so obvious that he's not leaving his wife or anything. Like he's just
Yeah,
sitting
I
there
mean,
like,
he's
she is
like-
faultless in this. And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what are
I'm
you
like,
talking
you don't
about
get,
then?
you don't get points for saying that. Like, stop
Right.
it.
like I thought that was going
Oh.
somewhere. Like he was saying something. I was like,
He was just-
yeah, that's
he was
it's
just-
still
he was just-
bad. Like
Man, he was just still like coming down off of that climax. He's just saying
Son-
whatever.
Son.
Yeah. So all right. So now I think we can talk about a more significant
More
three
central.
three
Yeah.
homies. Maybe we start with Kane. Maybe. Do we want
Sure.
to start with him since we were kind of getting into that anyway? Like, what do we think actually happened with him? Because I mean, we saw what happened with him, but I'm curious. Like, you know, what's interesting to me about this movie is that there's a madness to the group that he's in that I don't fully see beyond with what's the Gina Rodriguez character?
Or Anya.
She's the only one that exhibits
yeah.
the madness, right? Like, but in his group, it seemed like there was some, I don't know, there was more of a manicness to that group that I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious about. And I wonder
they
if
were
it has
also
something to do with.
Well, they were
All
all
being
soldiers.
men,
Were they all
soldiers.
Yeah.
So like they were kind of like probably like that anyway. Like,
Yeah.
You know, guys get
Sorry.
together, start cutting each other's abdomens open.
yeah. Sorry, I was in the military, so hey, I this is accurate. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I like I said, for me, and obviously not everybody agree. I don't even know if a single person agrees, but I didn't feel like I felt like there was a part of him that was destroyed, right? Like there's some core element of him that willingly went into the shimmer and pulled the pin out of the whatever. It's what is that he kills himself with? Like I don't know
There's
what
some
weapons
type
are.
of
Phosphorus
phosphorus
grenade.
grenade.
A
or
phosphorus
something
grenade.
like
That's
that.
right. I knew it was something grenade. Okay. So, and he just blows up and he's gone, but he's not because he's on the other side of the camera watching it happen and recording it, right? Like he is the recorder, he is the witness of this thing that's happening. And then it's him. It looks exactly like him. He has a memory of Lena, obviously, because he returns to their home. It's not ever explained how he gets there, but he just shows up almost like he's on some sort of weird autopilot. And I think she's supposed to be in a similar place to that at the end. And I feel, for me, I feel like there's a note of something was destroyed, but they're there still at the end, right? They're there together at the end, and they've both lost something of themselves, but maybe that doesn't mean, you know, the marriage or whatever. That doesn't mean something new can't be created out of it. So I felt like, you know, the whole like his organs failing and blood just coming out of his face was, you know, not so great for him, but he seemed to recover from it, right? Like he seemed to recover. Who knows what's going on in the molecular level, but yeah.
Right,
And he
right.
recovers like what, as soon as they come back out? Like I can't remember
shimmer, well, as soon as the shimmer basically once it gets burnt to hell or whatever and it disappears, I think he just comes out of he starts to be okay, I guess, which I don't know what that means, but he's fine after. Well, I guess it's, you know, they're like you said, like them, like it's reconceptualizing what they had before their relationship.
Yeah,
so
like they've
it's
been
tearing
reformed
down
in this way.
and it's tearing down what they had previously, and they're basically being reborn in these new form. Well, it's ambiguous as to what she is. I don't know. Is she the new version, or is she just ultimately changed because she went and came back out? Like it's I don't know. But the point is she's different. It doesn't even matter who she is. She's different and he's different. And I don't know how much of his original memory he has, because at the end he asks when she walks in, "Are you Lena?" And so I assume he doesn't have maybe all the same, you know, parts that he has. Maybe some of, I don't know, like they don't detail that, but like they are these new versions of themselves, and they're here for each other. They hug. The last moment is them embracing each other. So it is fixed in some type of way. Whatever they did before is now fixed through these two, you know, life forms that whatever the hell they are. But him, the way he goes is, man, it like he like there's some epic like deaths in here. Like his is one of them with the bomb. Like, and I like that you're watching it, and then also you're looking at the result of what happened in front of you. That's still you know, sitting there in front of the camera. It's like, okay, I didn't expect that was, you know, so that was a crazy ass death, but like he goes out crazy, like Anya goes out super crazy by whatever the hell that bear,
the scream
yeah,
bear.
let's go. Let's pivot to her. So Anya is an interesting character too, because everybody becomes a heightened. It seems like who they are is heightened as they progress, right? And they have many arcs within that. But Anya, it's like you said earlier, there is this thing of her that seems hard, the most resistant to change, the most resistant to accepting this reality, and it destroys her, right? And I think that's one of the most haunting scenes in the movie, is that creature that's screaming the death scream of is it Cass?
Shepherd, I think. Yeah,
Shepherd.
Yeah.
He's screaming that death scream, and she runs to it again because she hasn't accepted, even though she's already been told that Shepherd is dead.
Yeah.
And I feel like that leads to her downfall. So I think it's spot on, Miles, when you said her resistance to change, her resistance to what's happening being so harsh, she gets possibly the most violent end because of it, maybe.
It's such a, man, that scene when she goes and then they're all just strapped in the chairs and the thing is just coming in to, you know, that's so creepy. Like the creature design on that is excellent. I don't know what, I mean, they keep calling it a bear, but I mean, yeah, I don't know what the hell that is. Like they reference it as being a bear, but
the bear's about the closest probably.
Yeah, but yeah, some version of a bear with like a skull or something on the outside. I don't know, Cubone, or what was the dude's name? Pokemon.
Yeah,
something like that. Because it looked like he had like some type of skull or exoskeleton or something on.
It looked like his face was missing. Like it was just skeletal. Yeah.
Cubone's pretty dark in a character himself, so it kind of fits. So. And that creature. So I did, like I said, I started reading the book, and there is they encounter in the book, different from the movie. They encounter a creature as soon as they go into the shimmer, which is not called that in the book. It actually is. You don't see anything in the book. Apparently, it's just completely like you can't even tell where the border is. But anyway, they go in, and this 700-pound boar comes charging at them. And it's like far enough away to where they like are sort of going through what to do as it's running at them down this path, and then they end up finally shooting at it, scaring it off, and everything. And you can tell it's gonna circle back, but and they keep seeing this creature, and I wondered if this could be the same creature, or as I read more, maybe there is a different one. But
there's also that one in the water, right? Yeah. Like there's like an alligator. Yeah, it's like an alligator.
Thing. There was like an albino alligator, which was also pretty effective.
You know what I liked about, again, subtlety? Like she gets yanked in, and then like a scene later, her backpack is like taped up. Like they don't mention it, they don't say anything about it. Just that detail, I was like,
right. Continuity. I see you, Alex Garland. Okay. So, and then we have Josie, which I feel is one of the more interesting characters. All of them are super interesting, but just her journey is really interesting to me. So Josie kind of starts off. I almost see her not childlike in a way, but there's a innocence to her character.
Yeah.
There's a gentleness to her.
Yeah.
That's she doesn't fit with. I mean, what's her face? Gina Rodriguez's character is kind of. She's the most macho, right? Like she's the most
She's
soldierly and sort of
the
masculine.
Vasquez of this.
And she's aggressive.
Yeah.
Natalie Portman is not, she's a tiny woman, and I think it's hard for her to be physically imposing. And then there's the other woman.
She's mentally imposing.
She is, and
But they
Shepard,
make her competent though, because she's
absolutely
good with that gun,
she can
and they
shoot.
ask
Like
her,
she can shoot. She knows what to do. She's not in any way sort of like a wilting
and it's
flower.
not,
And then
it's not over the top. It's reasonably competent. Like she knows how to handle.
She has mental
like,
toughness. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But Josie is very much feminine and gentle. I think of the group. Ventress is like a cold scientist who, like they're all sort of those, and Josie's definitely the gentle one, the one who has the softest voice,
Yeah. I wondered about this, and maybe it's just me overinterpreting the movie, but this watch through, I noticed that I think Shepard, I can't remember if it's Shepard or Anya that says it, but she tells Lena that Josie was the one freaking out and was like, I can't be here anymore and all that stuff when she saw the disgusting like man mural and
warranted.
She like freaked out.
It was like
she like freaked out, and it was the last time we saw her freak out. And I noticed they mentioned that they gave her a sedative, and then she's she's got this vibe the rest of the movie, and I wondered if that refraction, like in my head, I'm like, did the refraction cause something where the sedative merged with her? Now she's super mellow. Like I was like, probably didn't have nothing to do with it.
Where can I get one of those?
Right. Just super sedative. You'll turn into a tree.
You turn into a tree.
But because after that she almost, I don't know if I would say, she's almost apathetic to like what's going on in a kind of way where she's just not as invested as everybody else is, in terms of she's there to help. When Anya's like arguing about what to do and going back with Lena, who clearly doesn't want to go back, Josie doesn't really say much, and you can tell she's supposed to be on Anya's side, but she's just kind of present for it. Yeah, exactly. Like she's kind of like indifferent, where it's like,
well, I think
I'm
like
accepting what's happening here.
She's
happening
got cuts
here,
on her arms, right? Like, do they make it clear if the cuts are from a suicide attempt or are they from?
They said something about that. That was where the self-destruction conversation I think came from, but they never clarify.
So did she try to kill herself at some point? In which case, like, she's the closest to self-destructing of the group, right? Like, she's the most close to that, having done that even without the shimmer.
But I'm glad that the person, the one character that literally has tried to off themselves, they don't really, put much emphasis on her self-destructing like that. Like the emphasis is put more on these other characters, and their self-destruction, like less on her, who's someone who's actually trying. Well, I guess she says it. There's a difference between suicide and self-destruction. So I guess that kind of answers it. So she maybe is not trying to self-destruct.
Well,
she's
just
literally trying
to.
Right,
and in that moment, she just seems at peace, and she turns into something absolutely gorgeous, and maybe that's okay, And then there's I thought it was interesting that there are a bunch of other tree people standing around the area, or or like maybe were those some of the other the other missions that went in, but clearly it had happened to others.
And I wondered what what those people's state was like, because she was clearly someone who didn't really want to live, or something. I guess you could say it that way. Like because she tried to commit suicide before, or at least it's sort of emphasized that that's possibly her stance or whatever. Like I don't know, were all these other people the same way, or what made them turn into a tree? Like what like maybe they didn't have to be, maybe they were just accepting of. But how do you how do you know that? How do you get that to happen? Yeah, because there's something happening to everybody. Everybody's changing in some type of way, and I suppose like the guy that they cut his stomach open, he's got whatever that is.
Like, would I rather be a tree or have a giant boa constrictor inside my body? I don't know.
I do think it is somehow responding to it's somehow responding to what's driving them. You know, like
some quality they have.
The idea that because the idea again of Ventress wanting to face it and then doing that, and then that being it for her accepting her destruction essentially. And then you have Lena, who is so determined, so like, I can't not do this. Who is the one who is almost sort of selected in a way, and her strength maybe being a factor in that, and then her leaving. So when we go back to Rosie, I feel like there's also potentially an element of maybe she wasn't committing suicide. Maybe she was just harming herself because perhaps, again, there's some self-destructive like thing about maybe she doesn't like herself. Maybe she has, and so that acceptance thing also adds a layer, because to say like, well, maybe I am whatever I am, whatever's going to happen to me, maybe that's how it should be. And maybe that's better than who I am now, or who I was coming into this, where I wanted to destroy me. So then there's like a growth element there.
Yeah, there is. I think there's some lip service to that though, too. The fact that she's maybe wasn't trying to kill herself. I feel like someone said something to the effect she was trying to feel something.
They were they didn't know one way or the other. Yeah. But they were like, they were interpreting.
Trying to feel something. Yeah, I think I remember that too.
Yeah. So it could possibly be that, she was never trying. She's a
cutter. Yeah, she cuts herself.
Yeah, she just cuts herself. Yeah, because I've known people like that. So, and they weren't suicidal.
I've definitely.
They were just compelled
masochists, I guess. Like,
they're just compelled, and sometimes it is not suicide, but self-harm. You know, like not self-hatred, but maybe there's a frustration or something that is released through doing that to yourself too. Well, so I think Josie's a good place for us to get into the rule we've decided on. And look, the world's ending, essentially. There's a cancer like growing and spreading, and everything around you is dying and reforming and being remade. Tawny, what's our rule?
You know, if you're given the choice, if you you want to be eaten by a scream bear, or do you want to turn into a beautiful tree person? So just allow the change to happen. It's gonna happen, and I think that's what the movie's saying. It's we do these things, and changes happen, and fighting them, I think, ends in pain. And I think we see that in the various fates. Because really, Kane is the other, one of our homies who makes it out, and he blows himself up, right? And some part of him or some piece of him manages to make it out, and maybe that's worth saving, and maybe that's worth allowing the change to happen. Maybe if you let it happen a little bit, there's something to be preserved, right? There's something that gets preserved that's worth being preserved.
Let it happen. Go throw on that Tame Impala. I keep hearing that song every time you keep saying "Let It Happen." I love that song. But yeah, turn into a beautiful tree person. Like, I think I'm gonna make a shirt that says
"When in doubt, turn into a beautiful
tree person."
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like you look at how things play out, and you have to ask yourself, when we examine. I mean, the whole point of the show is to ask how these characters did. And it's always interesting trying to define what do we mean by how they did. And we specifically don't go based on do they live or die. And there's a reason for that, because in a horror movie, there's a spectrum of fates that could be worse than death, could be like better than what the alternative, maybe. And then there's some alternatives that could be better than living in this version of the world. And I would say Josie's a good example of saying, like, you know what? I'm gonna just go with it.
Just go with
I don't think I want to. It's that Captain America. No, I don't think I will. just gonna do this. I don't really
And
feel
like
like dealing with any more nightmare bears.
And even Kane, like he is reborn in a sense. Like he doesn't necessarily even technically his one form, is gone, but he's still here. Like
It's the ship. It's the whole ship allegory again of the
it is
pieces
the
that
ship
rot
of
off. And
Theseus. Yeah, it's like
yep.
I mean, because the reality is like they're showing these like animated portions of like these cells splitting the entire time. So whatever that is, it is him. Like even at the end where the drop of blood comes out of her and then it starts to that's her. It's a piece of her taken out and made into something else,
transformed.
It really is them. It's maybe not exactly the same thing, but it's like, I mean, is he dead? Because he kind of isn't dead. He kind of didn't die. Like, and he said before he died, I forget his monologue, but he says something about, I thought I was a man or something. I thought I was, this person walking around, but maybe I'm not. Maybe it's you. Maybe you're me or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, yeah, he's like,
and then I think it's interesting that he tells the other him to find Lena. Like that to me says something because it means he trusts this other him.
He willingly goes, like he willingly hands over the reins of his life to the new version of himself
to sort of, in an attempt, I think, to make it right, because they're obvious. We don't know really what the strife is in their relationship, but whatever it is, maybe the versions of themselves, the state that they're in before they go in, they can't fix it. They can't reconcile whatever their problem is. And these new versions can, in some type of way. Like there's that saying that you kind of, you have to die to yourself, in order to, grow or whatever. So the older version of yourself, metaphorically in our, world dies, but in this movie, literally, your old self dies in order for you to live on in some type of way and, change and be better. So it's like he kind of does live. He doesn't die, like, in that sense.
And they hug at the end. I think that's important, right? They're not like staring at each other weirdly. There's an embrace.
There's an embrace, and that just in alone, if neither of them is the original version of themselves, but that connection is still there, there's enough there, right, for there to be something. So, and it's interesting because in my head I'm like, well, who's to say that Kane and Lena didn't have the exact same fate? Like, I wondered if how much can this creature, the humanoid is what they call it in the description. How much does, after it taking his form, is there the possibility that what we saw explode was the humanoid and the Kane that left was the Kane that walked in but was changed? Because
I think it's ambiguous.
Lena was changing from the inside. So like you have that question of like, well, even though the humanoid thing we saw could be what blew up, the version of her that we saw, Lena, had been shown earlier in the movie to already be changing internally. So like there's so many layers to what this thing is doing. Yeah. It's like no version of you is walking out the same.
No, regardless, like even if it's the humanoid or it doesn't matter. Like I said, you're different. Period. It doesn't matter who's who at the end. You're not the same person you were when you walked in. You're somebody completely different walking out. So I mean, then there's that moment where she is unconscious for a moment and she wakes up and is laying next to her. But what happened, there's a moment where we don't know what happens. Like, we just know that she's unconscious for a brief period of time. And when she wakes back up, that's when this, dance sort of happens. And it's like, well, she could have turned into I don't know what I'm watching. Like, I have no clue, because she was changing anyway. Like, before that, they were all changing. So it's like, That's just a dope. I don't know, man. This movie's tight. Man. This movie's tight as fuck,
Absolutely.
man. If you,
I remember hearing about it and like seeing a trailer and being like, that looks like something that I will enjoy. And then hearing like, hey, it's good, and being like, wait, oh yeah, I heard about that movie, and then I never heard about it again. And finally like sitting down to watch it one day and having my mind blown, and then just wanting to watch it like a few more times just to like, what did I miss? It's just it's such an interesting and beautiful and beautifully scored. Everything about it is well done.
And the fact that they casted an entire, entirely women, like it's all women like in this cast, like, and they didn't make a big stink about it either, where Hollywood is like does this thing where they're like trying to be inclusive, and they like, hey, look, we're doing stuff that you want us to do, and it's like,
look how many races we knocked out in one movie.
Exactly. They're trying to fill a quota. I don't feel like they did this at all with like the marketing or anything. Like and one of the characters is gay. Like that. I mean, they're on top of they're doing a lot in here without even actually saying a bunch about it. It's just they're women. Okay, let's move on. Like. And like that's the dope thing about it. It's not like, it doesn't feel like Hollywood-ish where they're like, hey, look, we did the right thing. It's like, okay, like
you put a big lampshade over it. Like,
thanks
guys.
It just feels like they wrote a really like this.
Well, the book actually, which surprised me because I always just assumed, sadly, that those are changes. And the book's actually all women as well. And so they picked a good source material without being so beholden to it, because I can already tell that there's a lot of differences. But it's like Alex Garland did a good job, because he wrote this as well, of taking a material that he liked and turning it into something that worked for film. Because, a lot of sci-fi, we've talked about it. There's some stuff that's just unfilmable. And so, like, as a filmmaker, if the overall story does feel theatrical, then you have to decide, well, what do I do with those unfilmable parts? Do I just film it anyway and have it come across poorly? Or do I reinterpret it in a way that gives the same message, but better for the screen? And
what's the source material called?
It's called Annihilation.
It's called Annihilation, okay.
And it's, written by Jeff Vandermeer. It looks like it's part of a series.
The movie's called Annihilation. Like, the complete, like, that's what it means is complete destruction, like utter destruction. Yeah. Like, think about that. That's the name of the movie.
Right. Like, they tell you right up front. But it's interesting because it's portrayed beautifully, which is totally, the idea of a cancer being something that grows. but we usually think of things that grow in a beautiful green kind of way.
I also like the line, I think it's at the beginning, where I think Lena, she's talking about how, or I forget which one of them, but how humans are flawed. Basically, the fact that we die is a flaw in our creation, and it like we should just continue to change into something else. Basically, like they sort of preview what we're gonna see right at the beginning by saying that, where it's like, yeah, well, this is sort of a flaw, like we should just change into something else. And I mean, there's people that believe that, like, you know, that you're reincarnated, and you know, maybe that does happen. I have no clue, but it's dope that they set that up at the beginning, where it's like, yeah, we should just continue to, you know, evolve and change into something else. Like, to die is a flaw.
And also, like, to be willing to let go of things, I guess, in order to become something new.
Yeah, that's powerful. To be a willing vessel to, you know, of change is, I mean, most people don't want to be that. Like, most people are run away from change. You can't control much, but you can control whether or not you go with it, right? Like, stuff's gonna happen. You can
also
control
get
that.
the vibe. I also get the vibe of like a stages of grief kind of feeling to this movie.
Yeah.
So like, sure. I've been thinking about it, like, you know, almost like each character could represent. I mean, I would say, like, you know, Anya maybe represents denial. Maybe Lena represents bargaining, right? Maybe Josie represents acceptance, and like, there's like possibility there. And I may just be imprinting that, right?
No, that's what I was thinking. That's why.
But a movie that allows you to you know what I mean? Those are different themes, but they can be applied to this, and you can take that away from it, and you wouldn't be wrong.
They're all responses that a single human can cycle through, you know, in a grief process, right? So they're all like, they're all faces of things that we probably all felt on some level. Like, we can all identify, even if we get angry with Anya, like, we can identify with being like, no, fuck that. You didn't really see that. Being scared, or just being ready to just give up, or wanting to fight something or face it, or wanting to approach it logically, you know, from sort of a problem-solving angle. Those are all things that...
And irrationally, like, she gets to a point where she's gone through the denial part, and now she's just irrationally like, all right, well, I'm going to tie everybody up, and I'm going to just start cutting some people now, like... Which is what it doesn't solve anything, but I mean, we as people, you get to there, like you get to that point.
The betrayal, the fear, it overtook her, and it made sense. Yeah. Well, this is a fun movie to talk about. I could go on this movie for another hour probably, but
I want to watch it again.
Yeah, me too. Now it's excellent, man. It's really good.
It's so
good.
Pretty. Let us know what you thought of Annihilation. Hopefully, if you watched this all the way to the end, it's a movie that you've seen, because otherwise we spoiled it for you. But let us know in the comments if you're on YouTube. What did you think of Annihilation? Who do you think made it out the best in this movie? I think we agree that it was Josie, but maybe you feel differently. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or on Apple, if there's a way to rate and review us, please do so. Otherwise, you can catch us on Instagram at 2BXM Podcast, also on TikTok with the same name. And whatever way that you can find us, just support us in any way that you can, because we appreciate it. This is Two Blacks and a Mexican. Stay safe.